both as it related to him, give to Caesar what's Caesar's, give to God what's God's. You need to give yourselves to God, and you don't need to have you have no business trying to give me to Caesar. So pay the tax. Pay this 0.023% tax. And they marveled. So the interesting thing here for our purposes is that Jesus says that there is a parallel between the relationship, between the logic that governs the relationship between the king of Rome, the king of Rome, the Caesar of Rome, and his money, and the logic that governs the relationship between God and people. So again, this coin, that coin, there's an image. It bears the image of the person who issued it, and people bear the image of who? The person who issued us, the person who gave us life. So there is a real sense, this is going to sound weird, I don't mean this in any weird way, we're going to unpack it. People, is a real sense in which people are God's money. Okay? People are God's money. And so when you think about money, you should think about like the things that govern you as relates to God. This work can work reflexively. It should also, there should be semblance, there should be a relationship between how we think about the creation of money. So now we're at the moment of truth here. We're going to unpack that a little bit more, but people are God's money. Money is not a human invention. It is a divine creation designed to help people accomplish the mission given to them by God. Money is no small thing because it's meant to point to true, lasting, eternal sources of value. Okay? It's pointing at bigger realities, and specifically this reality that we're made in God's image. Money points to this reality. However, the same temptations that led to the corruption of people in the Garden of Eden in Genesis chapter 3, the same temptations that led to the corruption of people lead to the corruption of money. All throughout human history, always lead to the corruption of money. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so here we go. So what is money? We're actually going to answer the question, what is money? Okay, we answered it in the beginning. It is a store of value. It's a unit of account. It's a medium of exchange. Those are properties of money. But what is money? Money is a device for moving value across time and space. Okay, that's one basic definition. It's also, you could also say it another way. There's a bunch of things that you could use to describe, but money is a solution for the problem of a coincidence of wants. Okay, what that means is a coincidence of wants is basically, imagine that I am an orange farmer, and Ben is he works with agriculture, so he's growing bananas, let's say. Now Ben and I can trade for a certain period of time. Okay, we can trade a certain number of oranges for bananas. But there's going to come a time when I'm going to be sick of bananas and Ben's going to be sick of oranges, all right? Now, again, we're bigger guys. We can eat, but, we're going to maybe eat more than the average person, but we're going to get to the point where we're going to have too many things and we're going to have other bills to pay. And maybe, when we're trying to pay for our electricity, they're not going to accept bananas. It's not going to work. So the reason money exists is because this reality exists. We have points that we want to pay something or we need to be paid, and we can't pay for it we can't pay or be paid with the thing that we have. We need to get a third thing that is valued by more than just one or two people. It's valued by ideally everybody in a community. This third thing that can go between us, that can mediate trade between us or mediate transactions between us. So this is what money is. The goal is to move value across time and space. It's to solve this problem of a coincidence of wants, or the lack of a coincidence of wants. And so it's this mediating thing. So as far as this idea of moving value across space and time, what does that mean? Okay, so if I work, you guys go to your job, you guys earn money. You earn that money, and what do? You go take it home, keep it at home, or put it in a bank, or keep it in your phone. Whatever you do. You have that money and you want to have it for some point in the future when you can spend it on something that you need or something that you want. Again, there's a reason why we don't use bananas as, especially apparently I've heard Zambian bananas. We don't use Zambian bananas as payment because why? They go bad, right? They go bad pretty quickly. So you're not going to, let's say you want to save up for a house and you're like, all right, I need to save up 4 million bananas, and then I'll be able to buy a house. That's not going to work. Bananas won't last that long. So bananas don't make good money. We need something, this third thing that can be good money. So what are some characteristics of money? Some characteristics of money. These are things, 5 characteristics. Again, this is debated. There's more than this. There could be less than this. But these are 5 things that are generally agreed upon as far as characteristics of money. Durability. We just talked about this with bananas. You want something that's going to last longer than a few hours or a couple days. Portability. You want something that you can move from where you are to where you need to spend it. You don't want to use a building as money in one sense, because you're not going to be able to really move it. It's going to be inefficient. It's going to be not ideal. So you want portability. Portability is an important characteristic. Divisibility. What are you going to do if you want to buy a house versus if you want to buy a banana? Okay, you need to have something that can be broken into small enough pieces that you can complete either one of those transactions. So divisibility is important. Recognizability. During the, it was during the class yesterday before the debate, somebody held up one of a Zambian bill, and they said, how do you know if this is a real thing versus a false bill? And what he pointed out was that there's this certain number on the bill, depending on the specific location, where if that matches the other number up here, then it's a real bill. And if those don't match, then it's counterfeit, and you should, go complain to somebody and try to get your money back or whatever. So recognizability. How do we tell the difference between the real thing and the fake thing? Is there some way to tell the difference? And so you want to have some sort of clear indication, clear markers that this is money or that this thing isn't money. And then scarcity is another really important characteristic. Now, why is that? Because your time is scarce. Your life is scarce. The food that you're going to buy with this money is scarce. The clothes that you're going to buy are scarce. So if you're going to, especially if you're the one providing a service, okay, you don't want to give away or exchange your time, your work, your expended energy, your mental energy, whatever it is. You don't want to trade scarce, valuable things for something that isn't scarce. So this is why we don't use something like sand as money. Why wouldn't sand make a good money? Because I could just go dig it up anywhere, pretty much. I could go dig it up, and be like, hey, give me that house. I'll give you a bucket full of sand, and oh man, thanks, very generous. No, we don't want to do that. You want something that is scarce. And so ideally, you have something that has all of these properties. Ideally, you have something that has factors and all those things. But many times throughout history, people have chosen things that maybe only have a few of those, or maybe have 4 out of the 5, or some different things. So a history of money. So throughout time, you have something like shells or stones or salt that's used as money. These are special shells. This isn't just like any shell. There's special colors or shapes. They were rare. They were pretty, and they were valued for their for different characteristics. And that served as money in different places. Gold has served as money for a very long time. And one of the reasons is because gold is a fantastic money. Gold is divisible. You can divide it up into pretty small pieces. It's durable. It lasts. It doesn't tarnish. It's recognizable. You can that's actually the weakest point. But you can verify through weight largely in different ways. You can verify if it is or isn't gold. It's very portable. You can carry it around pretty easily. There's a limited supply. How do we get gold? Can we just say, let there be gold, and it'll just appear? Can we grow gold? No, can't grow gold. You can only find gold. You have to go out and dig in the ground and hope you find it, and do things that way. So now, gold is great. Gold has served as money for much of human history. The recognizability, gold isn't perfect though, because this recognizability thing. How many of you guys have heard of fool's gold? Fool's gold it looks like gold, but it's totally worthless. It's totally worthless. The other reason why gold can be difficult to be recognized is there are other metals that weigh about the same almost exactly the same as gold does. And so what some people will do in order to try to get away with being fraudulent is they'll take this other metal. I think it's like tungsten is this other metal. It's very heavy, very dense, very glorious. They'll have the core of a bar of gold. It'll be tungsten. And then they'll wrap it in a thin layer of gold. And so it feels like gold. It seems like, man, everything's right. The only way to test and see if it really is gold is to melt it down. It's to melt it down. And then you can see what's actually, so that you apply heat to it and what it really is gets revealed. That'll preach, right? That's the, you can apply that to some other places. So gold has served as metal, or served as money in many places around the world. Silver also. Again, the thing with gold is that historically gold is very valuable, and so gold is great for larger transactions, but for smaller day-to-day transactions, it's kind of hard. Again, if you're going to buy four bananas with some gold, you're going to need to have like little flakes of gold. It's going to be not ideal. It's going to be hard to get the same size flakes repeated, and so they use something like silver. Silver is nowhere near. It's I believe like it's 10 times as rare. 10 times less scarce than gold, but it's still relatively rare, valuable. That is also used as money for smaller day-to-day transactions. Then you come to a point where, again, all of these things are great. The one downside to gold and silver, they have all these great principles. One of the downsides is that they're heavy and they're annoying to carry around. If you're going to imagine you're going to go to the thing, you're going to go buy, let's say, a medium-sized person. You're going to go buy a car. All right, you can have, maybe a small bag of gold or maybe tons of silver. You're going to have a wheelbarrow full of silver to go buy a car. And you're running down the street with your wheelbarrow full of silver. You got people all over the place who are like, yo, man, this guy's got a wheelbarrow full of silver. Let's go rob him. And so they go and they take your silver, and then you're missing your silver. What are you going to do? If you got gold, you have to, you're sitting there. It's scary carrying around large amounts of gold, and it becomes pretty obvious if you're going to do this. So gold has some downsides. It's also really heavy. So they came up with a system to use paper notes. These are called reserve notes. So what you would do is you go to a bank, you deposit your gold or your silver, and they would give you a certificate, a piece of paper that said this is a representation of X amount of gold or silver. And so this was way more convenient, way lighter, easier on your back. Everyone was rejoicing, felt so much more convenient. And then if need be, if they wanted to exchange the certificate for gold or for silver, they could run down to the bank, they could give them the certificate, and then boom, they just give you the exchange and you can go do what you want to do. So this was a lot more convenient, but it also opened up some really hazardous things. So again, all of us, we tend to go towards convenience. We want convenient things. We want things to be easy. And that makes sense and is fine to a degree. But over time, people got so used to using just these paper stand-ins for the gold or silver that, people started day to day, people just stopped using the gold and silver. And so the gold and silver is just sitting in these bank accounts, just sitting around doing nothing. And so you started, it could be lent out at interest and stuff like that. But over time, the bankers just basically, they would charge a fee for basically doing the hard work of protecting this gold. So what were they doing? What were they being paid for? Well, they built big buildings with thick walls. They hired guys with guns or, earlier bows and arrows or swords, whatever. They hired guys to protect them, and so that had a cost associated with it. And so they would do that. So over time, they started to kind of change this agreement, and so they would say, all right. Well, this gold's just sitting here. Let us, loan it out to people at interest. So if you've got your gold in the bank, you can loan it out to people, and let's say we make 15% interest. It's still scarce. People are to make money, and so people were like, hey, that sounds like a good deal. I'm making money. I'm making money off this. This is a recurring source of revenue for me. Great. The problem was that over time, that percentage that they needed to maintain in the bank in order to basically keep everybody confident the bank was sound grew lower and lower and lower. And so got to the point where you got to the point where there were reserve requirements that were, again, this is for a good period of time. It was, I believe it was 90-10. So you only had to have basically 10% of the reserves on hand in these bank accounts in order to loan it out. You only had to have 10% of the money that you said you had to be able to loan out to people. This is not ideal. This is not an ideal situation at all. And then the last thing, we're going to get into how that kind of fell apart, but one of the other last ways that this went really bad was you have things like bond markets. Bond market. Who knows what a bond is? What is it?
Something issued by government that will allow the government to borrow money from you.
Correct. Yes. Now listen, bond market. Wow. It sounds impressive, right? What a bond is just debt. It's just a debt. By buying a bond, you're floating the government a loan and they're promising to pay you a certain level of interest to pay you back in a certain period of time. So it's basically, it's the government is the guy who comes to your door, he's asking for a handout, and then you give it to him, and he promises to pay you back. That's literally what's going on. So that idea of bond markets where you could do this, nations could do this. They could sell debt to their people, they could take loans from their people and then promise to pay back. Because what's more strong and certain than government? Right? That's the logic. Bank accounts, credit cards, all these things are more modern inventions. But these have been used. All three of these things, or all five of these different things, have been used as money. So now, what is the situation we find ourselves in? So that worked for a while. Now, here's what happens. Here's the downside of this: was in the end of World War II. We're skipping a ton. We're skipping 5,000 years of history. We don't have time for everything. But after World War II, you had a situation where a lot of the countries in Europe had barely survived. They had spent a ton of gold, their gold reserves, buying things like food and weapons and bullets from the United States largely. There are other countries as well, but largely the United States, because the United States is geographically so far away from most of the fighting. They had this advantage, and they had tons of resources and stuff. So Europe spent a lot of their gold to just survive World War II. And so as World War II was coming to an end, they didn't have enough gold to continue using it as money. So the question was, what are we going to use as money? And so they went to this place called Bretton Woods, I believe it's New Hampshire, and they had this thing called the Bretton Woods Conference. So in Bretton Woods, they did this conference, and they basically were going to decide what are we going to use as money. And so the United States, again, so the United States has all of this gold. They've got tons of gold. So they're like the 900-pound gorilla in the room. If all of us are right here and a 900-pound gorilla comes in the room, what are we going to do? We're going to do whatever that gorilla wants us to do. we're going to let him, we're going to be like, all right, man, whatever you want, you can take whatever you want. We're not going to argue with you. And so the United States had a ton of leverage. And so what they said is, here's what we think we should do. We think that given that we have so much gold, here's what we'll do. We'll peg the price of gold to $35 per ounce. Then we'll give you guys dollar reserves. Rather than you guys holding gold, you guys can buy dollars from us. You will figure it out somehow. And you guys will hold US dollars as your reserve currency. So you're holding those in your bank accounts. And then you guys can peg your currencies to a certain number of dollars, depending on how strong your currency is, whatever. So again, this sounded fine, sounded good. So again, what are they going to say? The countries, they go along with this. And so from 1944, when this agreement was made, to 1971, that's the situation. Now, in 1971, I believe, I never remember this, it's either the Germans or the French. The French, there we go. Look at Ben, telling you what. So the French, what is it? I read your book. Oh, there you go. See, that's right. It's been a while. So the French come to the United States, and as part of this deal, the check on this deal was that countries could come to the United States and exchange some of their dollar reserves for gold. They could basically keep everybody honest. They could come to the United States and say, hey, we want to exchange some of these dollar reserves for gold. They showed up to 1971 to do this. They're like, okay, great. The very next day, the President of the United States comes out and says, the United States is stopping the convertibility of gold for dollars. We're not going to do this anymore. And so effectively what happened that day is the United States declared bankruptcy. They said, we don't have the gold resources to back up the dollar reserves that are out in the world. And so what quickly became apparent is that the United States had been abusing what is called their exorbitant privilege, which was the fact that they were the only nation on earth that could legally print the US dollar. They'd been saying, all right, we're only going to create, for every dollar that we create, we're only going to create as many dollars as we have an ounce of gold to back them. They'd actually been abusing that like crazy. And so they'd been secretly printing money. They'd been secretly buying up different things, scarce things, with this money that they were creating out of thin air. And so that day that happened, it threw the entire world into chaos. Because at this point, whereas before you had, think about, imagine I'm holding a kite, okay? I am gold. It's very unkind, but let's say I'm gold, I'm special. So I'm sitting here, I am gold. The kite string that I'm holding is the US dollar, and the local currencies, the national currencies around the world, is this kite. In that day in 1971, that string, the connection to gold that was connecting all these currencies to reality, was cut. And so now all of these national currencies are floating out into the air, just being blown away wherever they want to go. And so at this point, every currency on earth is only as strong as its government is fiscally responsible. Okay, now, here's what happens over time. Governments, especially when you have democracies, okay, you have every 4 years, every 6 years, whatever it is, you have elections. And so new candidates, they're trying to convince people to vote for them. And so what is one of the biggest carrots that they can put in front of people to vote for them? I'll give you free stuff. Okay? If you vote me in, I'll give you free stuff. Well, where's that free stuff going to come from? Are they just going to be able to say, like God, let there be free stuff? And then it's going to come into, no. That free stuff has to come from somewhere. They actually have to grow the food or, make the clothes or do whatever it is. They can't just create. The fancy word is ex nihilo. They can't just create out of nothing the way that God can. But with fiat currency, with this paper money that's not backed by anything, they kind of can do that. They can't do that forever, but they gave themselves the ability to do it. And so over time, this is why a lot of those currencies the dynamic that I was describing in Uruguay and Venezuela, a lot of these currencies started to fail once the government printed too much money, largely to give away free stuff. So largely this has happened. So in Uruguay, it's happened 3 times since 1971. Venezuela, Brazil, Argentina, it's happened 4 times. And so this is what just started to happen. And so imagine, why does this matter? This seems like not really that big of a deal. Like let's get practical. What does this look like? So imagine ACU is trying to buy a building, okay? Imagine they're trying to buy a building. Now, again, you guys are growing. There's new students. They want to come and study. They want to study God's word. They want to go be pastors, all these things. And so, Ben's over here. He's like, all right, we're saving. We're going to save up. We're going to, produce more than we're produce more than we're consuming. We're going to start saving, and then over time, we're going to save up and build, buy a building. Ben and ACU, you guys save for 12 years. You guys have saved up, crazy number, $1 million, okay? You're only $100,000 away. The building costs $1.1 million. You guys are like, yes, we're so close. In year 12, right as you have enough money, you've denied yourself. You guys have saved. You guys haven't consumed. You haven't gotten the new cars. You haven't gotten the new whatever, the shoe, the new whatever. You guys have saved. And in year 12, the currency fails. If you're saving in that currency, your money becomes worthless within the span of a few months, over the course of a year, whatever it is. And all of that self-denial, all of that hard work that went into producing money to save becomes worthless. And so this is an awful, horribly unjust thing to happen. This is not just, that's a bummer. No, this is immoral. It's immoral because what's happening is the governments are stealing from their citizens in order to, carry out the things that they want. And they're saying, basically, we're going to benefit. We're going to get this free money out of thin air, and we're going to do whatever we want. And it's going to affect you guys, but it's going to take long enough that we're kind of banking on the fact that nobody's going to be able to piece together what's happening. So it's basically governments benefiting at the expense of their citizens. And that is a predatory relationship. This is actually, now this, part of this is just going to happen. The apostle, one of the things that God says to Samuel when the people of Israel come to him and are asking for a king, they say, we want a king. And Samuel is upset. He's like, you have God. You don't need a king. God's taking care of your needs. You guys don't even need to pay taxes. You guys are saving so much in taxes by having God be your king. And God says to him, yeah, like Samuel, don't take it personally. It's their hearts are hard. They're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. And so this is the nature of what happens. People want governments. They want to look powerful. They want to look like all the other nations. This is the dynamic that Israel had going on. And so these governments require resources. And rather than unlike God, who needs nothing, God doesn't need money from anybody. We don't tithe and give things because God is needy. We give money and we give other resources. Israelites would offer sacrifices because it would provide for the needs of the priests, because it would show, it would reveal, and this is another thing that money does, is it reveals like their commitment and their trust of God. I'm going to sacrifice the best sheep that I have because I love God and I trust him to provide for my needs. I'm going to sacrifice the first fruits of my labor. I'm going to offer, as soon as I get paid, I'm going to give my tithe or my offering out of that because I trust God. I'm going to give him the priority. So this is the dynamic. And so what we see right now, the situation that we find ourselves in, is every currency on earth right now is a paper fiat currency, or a paper and digital fiat currency, because the crazy world that we live in right now, it's even crazier than just paper currency. Right now, the vast majority of money is digitally made. And the way that it's created, Ben and I were talking about this, is insane, which is it's created digitally on a spreadsheet. So when you go to get a loan, if you're going to go to the bank right now to get a loan from the bank or private bank or from the government, whatever, there's not like all bunch of people who have their deposits saved there in this bank. What they do is they create an entry on a ledger and create a new debt for the amount that is required for you to buy whatever that thing is. So let's say it's 1.1 million for a building, and you go to the bank and you take out a loan, take out a mortgage to do that. They don't have 1.1 million. They're not basically pooling together $1.1 million and then giving it to you. They're creating $1.1 million out of thin air, and then you're promising to pay that back into the future. So whereas hard money, scarce money like gold or silver, the production goes in on the front end. You have to produce this money. You have to do work on the front end to dig it out of the ground, to refine it, to do all these things. The situation that we have right now is that the promise is made and then the work is done after that. So it's a completely different situation that we have. So this is the monetary situation we have. It's insane because, again, governments around the world can just print money out of thin air to do whatever they want to. They don't need to ask permission. They can justify it through all kinds of different means. And so it's not a healthy, sustainable thing. There's countries all over the world whose currencies are crashing. And so this is where we bring us to Bitcoin. We're not going to get into Bitcoin, but we're going to get into that on Monday. But Bitcoin is basically, the question is, where do we go from here? What are we going to do for money now? All these monies around the world are crashing. All of them, including the US dollar. The US dollar has lost 99% of its purchasing power in the last 100 years. You used to be able to, my grandparents would be like, when I was younger, I could get gas for 5 cents a gallon. It was very cheap, so cheap. Well, no, what happened? Did the gas just get so much better today? Is it just so much better gas that now it's $4 a gallon or $3.50 a gallon? No. It's the same exact gas. It's just it's way more expensive because the currency has been so, printed and created. There's so much more of it now that the value of it has gone down.